about surfaces. So we already looked at creating a fill from line work that matches a surface. What we want to do now is create the surface that's going to actually show in elevation. So if we go into our surface editor here under options and surfaces, we can see all of the various surfaces in the project here on the right, sort by name. They're all organized by CSI division, and it's pretty minimal. The surfaces are one of those things that we really want to be additive towards our projects, rather than overloading the project with a bunch of surfaces that you have to sift through. So in the case of creating a new surface, the easiest thing to do is to just select an existing surface. There are new surface and new folder options. We're going to ignore the folders for now in the attributes. That's a new feature in 26 that just seems to clutter things up. But we're going to call this new stone, let's call it new cobble wall. And it'll match the fill that we created. So I've created this new surface just by duplicating the existing. I'm going to add an image to that, clicking right here. And we're going to click add. This can sometimes take a little bit because it is adding to the embedded library. And I'm going to click any PNG or JPEG. And again, it's better if this is a self-tiling surface so you don't get the weird joints in between. But for the purpose of the demonstration, we're just going to use this quick screen grab that I pulled. And we're going to add that in here. It's added to the file. We're going to keep the proportions, locking this here to the original proportions. And we are going to set that to 2.5 feet so that it matches what I had drafted out here. This is where we get into adding that cobblestone wall surface, the fill that we created in the previous video. And going back to the pen sets that we talked about, this is where I want to determine how dense that fill is going to be on the elevation and how dark I want that to show, how prominent. So I'm going to pick a medium gray right here. There are also 3 different engines. In the current iteration of ArchiCAD, they call that the basic engine, the hardware acceleration, and the Redshift by Maxon, which we don't use now that we have Twinmotion, so we can just disregard that one. For the general settings up here at the top, there are transparency settings, there are emission colors, there are reflection and shininess and glowing colors, or glowing intensity. For most average, let's say matte to semi-gloss finishes, I like to use 85, 85, 10, and 12 for the ambient, diffuse shininess and specular glow. Specular glow can be adjusted to add a little bit of a tint to the project. Generally speaking, that should be, in my opinion, like a dark gray or a black. Keep it kind of neutral. And again, that's with the idea that we're going to have this sort of semi-gloss or matte surface for most of our images. There are also alpha channel effects, which we don't really need to worry about in this basic engine setting, which is what we're going to be viewing the model at most of the time. So that's creating a new surface from an image that I've carefully photoshopped to be self-tiling. Obviously, like this one is not the case. I have those joints, but we would want to Photoshop that out to reflect that. And then match it with a drafted surface created, drafted fill that's been created as a custom symbol fill. There's a couple of other options for creating new surfaces. If I go new, I can say new from catalog. There are 2 catalogs that we have in our libraries. There's the ArchiCAD library and there's the Walker-Warner library. The Walker-Warner library includes additional surfaces that Graphisoft has created for SSA members. That's our Graphisoft subscription. So we do have an additional catalog in the Walker-Warner library as well. And there's various surfaces in here, all broken up by different categories, ceramics and metalwork and stone and things like that. So if, for example, I wanted a stone pattern like that, I can grab one of the surfaces right here and add that to the project. The issue with these surfaces, the only issue with them, is that they come in with whatever their random name is. So we do want to go back and rename those. So we'll give this 04 Cobble 2, for example. And then it's a decent surface. They're good starting points. They're never going to be exactly what we want to see in our final model, but they can get you sort of a more realistic appearance in preliminary models and design development level models. For the most part, we're going to always be creating surfaces from custom images, photos, photoshopped work to get exact surfaces, colors, tones that we want in our model. The other thing about these surfaces is that if there is no surface image here, if I were to remove that surface image, it's going to actually be using this color instead of the surface image. It will retain the fill that was applied to it. So if I wanted this just to be gray stone, I would probably want to also adjust this surface fill to maybe a screen fill or a solid fill or an empty fill, so that in elevation it matches what the actual appearance in 3D is. Now, what this looks like in plan view and elevation view on the actual surfaces, let's just go ahead and I'm going to copy this up and look at this in 3D. Right, so here's that wall that I copied over. If I go to the settings of that wall and use this callable wall surface, I can see that surface pops up here automatically. But because I've carefully drafted out and scaled that fill to match, if I add an elevation to the model, let's put that on just for the ease of use here. We'll put it on the ArchiCAD layer and show what that looks like here in elevation. Process in a couple seconds. I can see that I get that fill that matches my 3D elevation because the scale and everything originates from the same bottom point that I drafted out. I know that the pattern matches. If I need to adjust where the origin of that pattern is, this is specifically true with like tile and board patterns, probably less true with random stone patterns. But if I wanted it to, for example, originate from this corner outward, you can go to Document, Creative Imaging, Align Texture, and Set Origin. And that gives me the ability to click right here and say that the whole pattern starts at that point and works its way around. That also allows you to align walls that are stacked, or even align around a corner so that the origin for both walls around a corner is at the same point.